I've been married to my husband for 10 years, and only now do I realize I never really understood how much he actually loves me. 10 years of marriage, and I thought I knew everything about my husband Dave. I knew he liked his coffee black, hated horror movies, and had this weird obsession with organizing the garage every 3 months. I knew he snored when he slept on his back and that he'd eat cereal for dinner if left to his own devices. But apparently, I'd been missing the most important thing of all. It started 3 weeks ago when I got diagnosed with pneumonia. Not the dramatic TV movie kind where you collapse gracefully. The real kind where you hack up your lungs for days, run a fever that makes you delirious, and generally feel like death warmed over. Dave insisted I take time off work, which annoyed me because we couldn't really afford for me to miss shifts at the clinic where I work as a nurse. Just rest, he kept saying. I've got everything handled. I figured he meant he'd manage not to burn down the house and maybe remember to feed our 2 cats. Dave's always been more of a good intentions, questionable execution kind of guy. Like the time he tried to surprise me with breakfast in bed and somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm making toast. But then weird things started happening. I'd wake up from fever naps to find my favorite soup waiting on the nightstand. Still steaming. Not canned soup either. The homemade chicken and rice kind my grandmother used to make, which takes hours to do properly. When I asked Dave about it, he'd just shrug and say he'd picked up a few things. The house stayed mysteriously clean despite me being bedridden and Dave supposedly handling everything alone. Laundry appeared folded in drawers. Bills got paid. The cats didn't riot from neglect. Our normally chaotic home ran like clockwork, and I couldn't figure out how. Then I started noticing smaller things. Fresh flowers appeared on my nightstand every few days. Not expensive bouquets, just simple daisies or tulips from the grocery store. My phone was always plugged in and charged when I woke up, even though I kept forgetting to do it myself. The thermostat was adjusted perfectly throughout the day to keep me comfortable as my fever spiked and dropped. One morning, I felt well enough to venture downstairs and found Dave at the kitchen table with his laptop, surrounded by printed articles about pneumonia recovery, nutrition during illness, and natural remedies. He had pages of handwritten notes in his messy scrawl, including a meal plan designed specifically for respiratory recovery. Dave, what is all this? He looked embarrassed, like I'd caught him doing something wrong. Just wanted to make sure I was taking care of you properly. I know you're the medical expert, but I figured I should educate myself. That's when I realized he'd been researching for hours every night after I fell asleep, trying to become an expert on my illness so he could help me heal faster. This man, who usually asked me to Google basic things for him, had turned into a medical researcher overnight. The real revelation came when I found his phone unlocked on the counter. His recent calls showed he'd been coordinating with my sister, my best friend Sarah, and even my coworkers to create some kind of support network. Sarah had been dropping off the homemade soups. My sister had been coming by while I slept to help with cleaning. My coworkers had been sending care packages. But Dave had orchestrated all of it. He'd swallowed his pride and reached out to people, admitted he needed help, and organized an entire care team around me. Dave, who usually avoided phone calls and social coordination like the plague, had become a logistics mastermind, just to make sure I had everything I needed. When I confronted him about it, he got that sheepish look again. You take care of everyone else all day at work, he said. When you're sick, you shouldn't have to worry about anything. That's what husbands are for. I started crying right there in the kitchen, and not from the lingering effects of pneumonia. For 10 years, I'd seen Dave as sweet but somewhat helpless, the guy who needed gentle reminders and couldn't be trusted with complicated tasks. I'd been managing our household largely alone because I thought I had to. But when it really mattered, when I was genuinely vulnerable and needed him most, Dave had stepped up in ways I never imagined possible. He'd become the husband I never knew I had, the partner I'd somehow failed to see despite a decade of marriage. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or perfect execution. Sometimes it's about a man researching pneumonia treatments at 2 a.m. because he's terrified of losing you and determined to do everything right.